Hello everyone, welcome to my lesson. So today we have the next lesson in English class, and the question is the unemployment. And probably before starting, we'll revise the questions concerning the key concepts of unemployment, and then go to the types of unemployment, and then discuss the elements of labor force and non-labor force population. And then perhaps talk about the specifics of unemployment, known like the different subtypes of unemployment. Okay, so let's start. Well, firstly, I would like to revise you that unemployment is among the important and unfortunately hard macroeconomic problems. On the other side, the unemployment rate is among the important macroeconomic indicators. So to understand the concept of unemployment, first we need to start with the question how to measure the unemployment. Okay, so formally, when we want to measure unemployment, we have to divide the working age population into two big groups. The first group is the people that we classify like the part of labor force. So simply saying, people in the labor force. The other group is not in labor force. So the people that formally we evaluate, we value them like not in labor force. So it's easy to identify, to define the labor force because we think that labor force consists of the total of two parts of employees that participate in labor market, and that is employed people and unemployed people, or employed workers and unemployed workers. But on the other hand, we have to think about the elements of not in labor force. If you remember last time we discussed the example concerned on the question. So originally when we started, I put you a question, what do you think about the situation? Is it like this? Is it possible to associate the total population of the country with the labor force at the same time? So the answer is unfortunately negative, because the elements of labor force implies two big groups of employees in labor market. In case of not in labor force, we have to think specifically about the different groups of population that we consider. Well, so who are unemployed people? Do we have different types of unemployed people? Okay, so if we want to explain the people in labor market that we classify like unemployed people, so firstly we have to think about three possible categories of the employees. Now the first is the people without work, that they have made specific efforts to find a job within the previous 4 weeks. Then the second one, that are the unemployed people that are simply waiting to be called back to a job from which the people he or she has been laid off. And the third one, the people waiting to start a new job within the close 30 days. So as you can see, we have 3 different types of unemployed people. The other one, we discussed the labor market issues, and we recognize that one of the major reasons of unemployed occurred in the labor market is the situation where the supply of labor significantly exceeds demand for labor. But among that, we have to think about the major indicators of unemployment. And of course, we have start firstly with the labor market indicators. So when we discuss the labor market, we have to answer these three questions. So first one, what is the unemployment rate available in specific labor market? And what do we understand when we think about employment to population ratio? And the third indicator of labor market that very frequently discussed is labor force participation rate. Okay, so now you see the different approaches to the measuring of unemployment. So the major question is, how is unemployment measured? As you can see, there are three approaches and three indicators that help to measure unemployment. First one is unemployment rate. Actually, we're familiar with that because we know how to count this. The unemployment rate is calculated at the percentage of labor force that is unemployed. Simply saying, unemployment rate is ratio of unemployed people. That when we talk about the unemployed people, we have to understand that they are officially registered unemployed people. We find the ratio of the number of these people to the total labor force, and the result multiplied by 100%. At the same time, if we want to talk about the unemployment rate, so it's reasonable to think of opposite indicator, that is employment ratio. So employment ratio is the employed fraction of the labor force. And basically, that's the adult population. So employment ratio is employed divided to adult population. And of course, if we want to convert them into percentages, we have to multiply this by 100%. And the most interesting, and I think is slightly new for us, is the labor force participation rate that shows the percentage of adult population that is really involved in the labor force. And to calculate this indicator, we have to divide the total number of labor force in the country to the adult population and multiply by 100%. When adult population, it doesn't mean the total population of the country. In some definitions, in some approaches to the labor force participation rates, the economists prefer to identify the adult population like the difference between the total population of the country minus the institutionalized population and civilian population. So it means that we have to take away from the total population of the country the people kept in the different state institutions like prisons, mental hospitals perhaps, and different nurse homes, etc. And the military, the people that are right now currently involved in the military forces of the country. So the result of this difference will be adult population. Well, the next question that we want to discuss is the relationships between the employed people, unemployed people, not in labor force, and labor force. So you can see on this slide the step-by-step identification of the employed, unemployed, not in labor force, and labor force. So actually we know who are employed. The employed people are the set of the person, or just the group of the people. They are considered employed if okay, please switch off your microphones, please. Well, so employed is a person that normally we can consider as employed if he or she has spent most of the previous week working at a paid job. So normally, if the previous week someone is working on some company in the firm, formally he or she is considered like employed. But who is unemployed? With more details, we have to understand this. A person is unemployed if he or she is on temporary layoff. He or she is looking for a job or still waiting for the new job. So maybe is waiting for the new opportunity and is sure that will start date on a new job. The short group of the labor market participants is not in labor force. So a person who fits neither of these previous categories, like employed and unemployed, such as, for example, full-time student like you, because you are full-time students, so you are not in labor force. Then homemaker or retire, that's not in labor force, or voluntarily the person voluntarily refused to work. That is all of them are the different categories of the population that we consider not in labor force. So, and finally, labor force is the total number of workers. And we define them as the sum of the employed and unemployed people immediately. Well, the scheme will help you to understand the difference between the adult population of the country, labor force, and non-labor force. So it's clear that the labor force is the portion of the adult population. Non-labor force is slightly lower, but at the same time a significant part of the total adult population of the country. In turn, labor force is divided into groups of the people: employed people and unemployed people. This scheme is very useful to understand the differences between the total population of the country and the labor force, and helps to understand the differences between the population of the country, labor force, and wrong belief that in prosperous countries, in the countries with high degree of welfare of population, all people are employed. As you can see, in normally developed countries and successful countries, successful economies, the number of employed significantly exceeds the number of unemployed people. But what to do? Unfortunately, the economic realities frequently show us a lot of evidences when the situation is strictly opposite, when the number of unemployed people exceeds, unfortunately, the number of employed. By the way, under the current circumstances, I mean the COVID-19 virus circumstances, unfortunately, the tendency in the world labor market is not so good. And I cannot say that actually the good time is expected for the labor force. Well, let's continue. So there are some issues concerning the measuring of unemployment. Well, if you remember the previous lesson, and when we started, I've mentioned that it's very, very hard to distinguish among the purely unemployed and the other type of the people who don't work. So unemployed workers or unemployed employees, they're the people that are very actively seeking for jobs, and they are registered officially as unemployed because Otherwise, they cannot receive any unemployment compensation or any other transfer payments realized by the government to assist these people. That's very important for the officially registered unemployed people to behave extremely active, to show that they want to get the job, they want to get new jobs, new opportunities, because otherwise the official structures and then the legal authorities responsible for the controlling the number of unemployed people, they don't believe and don't rely on that. People who are very lazy, who don't want to change their life, who just take a seat and wait for new offers concerning the new jobs. But the people, unfortunately, not all are always lucky. Some of them are faced with many difficulties in their life, and they cannot find these jobs, even they try to find it, and sometimes the years pass, and they cannot find the suitable jobs. So in that situation, many people became discouraged, and that's why we classify them like discouraged workers. Unfortunately, significant portion of unemployed people still are among discouraged workers. That's why when we analyze officially announced unemployment rates in different countries, we have to behave extremely careful, because this official data frequently cannot describe the real situation in these countries, especially in their labor markets. And that's more important, with precise number of really unemployed people in the country. So discouraged workers are people who would like to work, but they give up looking for jobs, because many times they tried to do that, but unfortunately were unsuccessful, and their attempts to find the job were extremely unsuccessful. It was really unsuccessful search, and that's why they don't show an unemployment statistics. Excuse me. So the other people may claim to be unemployed in order to get some financial assistance, some financial help. Even in reality, they aren't looking for a real job. Yeah. Okay. The next question is, why does unemployment occur? Actually, in some ideal hypothetical labor market, in normal labor market, wages and salaries, they would adjust to balance the supply and demand of labor, ensuring that all workers will be fully employed. But that's the ideal labor market. Unfortunately, we don't have the similar markets, because practice is difficult. The practice is strictly different from the ideal labor market. Now, the other important issue concerning the unemployment is the types of unemployment, like the frictional and structural. Frictional unemployment, or temporary unemployment, or voluntary unemployment, refers to unemployment that results from the time. In other words, I may decide to change my work, to change my job. It's my decision. That's why I need to find some new job place. And this process takes time for all people, for all workers who want to change their jobs. So during this time, they are frictionally unemployed. Structural unemployment is the result of situation in labor market when the labor demand for labor, for specific labor, for specific professional skills, because of some structural changes of economics and or technological changes, frequently goes down. And the situation describes the labor market where there is not all job places available for everyone who wants to work. Structural unemployment requires new professional skills, and it takes time to get new professional skills. So that's the problem that describes the process of job search. So what does it mean, the job search? The process by which the workers find appropriate jobs given their preferences, their professional skills, their education, qualification, tastes as minima. And this process results from the fact that it takes time for qualified professional individuals to be matched with the appropriate jobs. So that's a specific process, and it takes time. Okay, some features of structural unemployment. As I mentioned before, the structural unemployment occurs when the labor supplied or quantity of labor supplied exceeds the demand for labor or quantity demanded. Structural unemployment often is thought to explain in terms of longer spells of unemployment, and I think that we need to go to identifying the unemployment. Okay, that's something new, the natural rate of unemployment. So the unemployment we have to evaluate in two terms, the long run unemployment and short run unemployment. So when we discuss the long run unemployment, so it's better to talk about the natural rate of unemployment. The short run unemployment is known like the cyclical rate of unemployment. So what is the natural rate of unemployment? The amount of unemployment that the national economy normally experiences and doesn't go away on its own even in the long run. Or that's unemployment rates at full employment level, and it's called the natural unemployment rate. How to calculate the natural unemployment rate or natural rate of unemployment? In practice, it's frequently the total of frictional and structural unemployment. Okay, among the different types of unemployment, the hardest one is cyclical unemployment. So cyclical unemployment associated is with the ups and downs of business cycle, the ups and downs of economic activity, short-term ups and downs, and refers to year-to-year fluctuations in unemployment among the natural rate of unemployment. The you can describe the cyclical unemployment in other way as well. Cyclical unemployment is fluctuating unemployment over the business cycle. And one more term concerning the unemployment is full employment. Actually, full employment occurs when there is any cyclical unemployment rate. It means that when all unemployment is frictional or structural. But in practice, we very often associate the full employment with natural rate of unemployment. Okay, so except for this new facts for us, so I would like to summarize the types of unemployment we discussed with you the previous lesson as well. So it's this frictional unemployment, structural unemployment, and cyclical unemployment. And each of these types of unemployment has its own specifics. But the one aspect that I want to discuss is the relationship between the unemployment and the economic effects of unemployment. Normally, among the economic effects of unemployment, of course, we have to talk about the slowdown in the welfare of the population of the country, declining of the earnings and incomes of population. That's unavoidably. Unfortunately, the unemployment leads to this fact that we have to recognize. The other one is that the people who stay for a long time unemployed, even if they don't want, at the end they have to be converted into discouraged workers. And the more the number of discouraged workers in a community, unfortunately, the higher the crime rates in this country, the higher the number of divorced people, the higher the children that are without the parents or one of the parents. And that's the social negative outcomes of unemployment. But except for that, there is very strict, pure economic effect. Unfortunately, the unemployment suffers the gross domestic product of the country. And even we can very precise calculate the amount of GDP gap occurred at the high rate of unemployment. And how can we do that? What are the major tools to calculate the, in numerical terms, the impact, the GDP impact? So we can use the well-known Oken law that helps to calculate the GDP impact in terms of monetary losses happen because of the unemployment rate. So Oken law asserts that for every 1% of difference between the actual unemployment rate and natural rate of unemployment, there is about 2.5 GDP gap. But the question that you have to put me is, what is the GDP gap? GDP gap is the difference between the potential GDP of the country and real GDP of the country. Potential GDP of the country is the amount of outputted goods, different products, services produced by the national economy under the only condition, and this condition is full employment, or simply saying the natural rate of unemployment. So that is this amount of GDP is potential GDP. But in practice, unfortunately, in many countries, we can observe the different degrees of cyclical unemployment. it means that the GDP gap, unfortunately, is unavoidable. So the difference between potential GDP and real GDP and under the specific rate of unemployment is the GDP gap that occurs because of unemployment. So now I see that we have about 2 minutes to the end. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer your questions. So, and think about the questions and I'll continue. So the literature that I would like to recommend to you is our traditional textbooks. You can find out the unemployment, the material concerning the unemployment, the explanation of unemployment and types of unemployment, then labor force participation rates, unemployment rate, discouraged workers, and open law in the book of McConnell Stanley Brew. Then in the textbook of Carl K. Sandra-Fair, as usual, we use these materials, and a lot of different internet resources. So that is the end for today. Have a good day. See you later.